So the first thing that we have to think about with working in the studio is, what is it that we're trying to achieve? You have to be a little bit introspective and think about, what is your sound? How do you capture that? What are you going for? Are you going for what you've always been doing? Are you going for something more commercial? Are you going for something that's unusual and unique and distinctly you? Having an idea of what you're going for can really be helpful at this stage. So before you start looking for a producer, you have to really think about your music and what it is that you're looking for. So first, where are you going to be getting your songs from? This is pretty basic, but in order to record, you need to have songs. And sometimes you might already have songs that you've been performing and you've rehearsed them, they're good to go, and all you really need to do is get into a studio with great equipment and record them. But sometimes you have those songs that you perform, and in front of an audience, working off the energy of the crowd, they're great. But when you record them, they sort of lose that energy, and they're kind of ordinary. From song to song, there's nothing really distinctive about them. Maybe you know someone that's a songwriter, and they have some unreleased songs that they would love for you to be the first one to record. Now, in this case, because they aren't our songs, we're going to have to make sure that we take care of the business side of things. Remember, we need to get a first use license, just permission from the songwriter that we're the first ones to record this song. We'll also need to address the mechanical licensing. For tangible copies, we'll need to pay for each copy we're going to make. For interactive streaming, the mechanicals will be paid by the streamers through blanket licensing issued by the MLC. And then covers. Are we planning to record any covers? If we have a really interesting sound, sometimes doing a cover of a popular song in your style of music can be a great way to build buzz around your band. People are really interested in hearing a really unusual version of a song that they're familiar with, so this might be something that you investigate. If you do, then of course you have that issue of mechanicals again. So once you've figured out what types of songs that you're going to be recording, then you need to start thinking about, how will a producer work on the project with you? So I'm going to ask you to stop the video in a few minutes to focus on the answers to the questions on this slide. You need to decide where these songs are going to come from. Are you going to be writing them 100% before you get to the studio? Are they partially written? Maybe you just have some lyrics and a couple of melodies. Are you expecting the producer to help you to finish those songs? Do you expect the producer to bring in some tracks, bring in a beat that you'll then collaborate with the producer on to build the song? It's really important to have a clear idea of how that songwriting is going to take place, because you need to know what you're looking for in the producer. If you are expecting songwriting and you hire a producer that doesn't write, that's going to be a problem. Likewise, if you don't expect the producer to collaborate on songwriting at all, and you hire a producer who's super collaborative and creative, you're going to be tying their hands, and they're going to be frustrated that you're not letting them help you to build your sound. So the clearer you are in what you want and what you don't want from your producer, then the better the chance that you're going to find just the right person to work on your project with you. So, stop the video here. Pretend that you're going to be going into the studio to record a project, and look at the questions on the slide and think about what you would want. What songs would you record? What would the role of the producer be on your project? And what wouldn't you want the producer to be doing? Write down your answers and really think about this, because this could be really the difference between having a great session and not. So now you have a clearer idea of the producer's role in songwriting. These discussions can often help you to have a clear idea of what the producer's role is going to be in the studio. Now, from there, you want to think a little bit more about the role of the producer and what you're comfortable with. Are you okay if the producer provides beats or tracks or starts doing some arranging of your song? If the producer sings on your track or performs? Are you comfortable with the producer adding in some other music? It's really important for you to be honest with yourself on what you're comfortable with and what you're uncomfortable with. Like, how much creativity are you comfortable having the producer bring to the project? Or do you want it to be 100% you? If you have a really clear idea of your expectations, there's always a producer out there that works in the way that you want to be worked with. So once you have a really clear idea about what you're going to record and how you're going to record it and what the producer is going to be doing with you, then we have to think about the money. What do you have in the budget? What can you afford to do? It's really important to pay attention to this, because if you have visions of recording like 12, 15, 20 tracks and you barely have any money, that's going to be a problem. Now, the thing to keep in mind, though, is that the rule of thumb generally is whatever amount you're investing into the recording of the tracks, you should double that and put that amount aside for marketing and promotion of that project. Now that you know what you want to record and how much it's going to cost and whether you can afford it or not, you have what you need to go out and to find the right producer for you. Like most things in the music industry, the best way to find a producer for you is to be able to talk with people within your network and explain the project that you envision, and ask them, did they have any producer names that they think would be right for the job? You'd be surprised at how many people are just wonderful matchmakers. So the better you are able to describe what you're looking for, the better you're able to get the right one for the job. Now, once you find that producer, most producers, at least the good ones, will want to meet with you before you even go into the studio. Typically, it's someplace informal, and it's just to sit down and talk, for them to get a sense of where you're coming from and what you're wanting from them and where you're trying to get to. With these meetings with producers, it's a really good idea to have thought really carefully about what it is that you're trying to achieve. It's a good idea to prepare some demos of you performing the music that reflects where you want to build from, or to bring some songs that you are really inspired by. For the songs that are you, It doesn't have to be the best recording in the world, as long as it's a really accurate representation of who you are as a performer. Most producers don't want you to spend hours, trying to lay down tracks yourself. They'd much prefer that you just get a good quality recording of a live performance of the song so they can get a sense of that energy that you bring to the music. You also want to be able to verbally describe your sound. And if you don't have your own recordings to share, it's a little bit of a hindrance. It's much better to be able to say, this is who we are, but at least be able to refer to other artists that have a sound that you would like to aspire to get as well. And part of this pre-production process is also being willing and able and prepared to listen to the producer's ideas for your music. Now, as you're getting ready to go into pre-production, some topics to think about are, what have we already created? What do we love about our back catalog? What do we love about parts of some of the songs that we already perform? And then we want to think about, what do our fans love? What are the songs that we know every time we start it, the fans get super excited? What are the ones that they like to sing along to? What are the ones that they like to dance to? What do they love about your performances? Then you got to take a step back and really think, are the sounds that you're aiming for in working with this producer, in all these discussions that you've had on what you want from the producer, is the sound you're aiming for what the fans love? Are you moving so far away from what the fans love that they might stop following you? This is a really important thing to think about. But at the same time, there's that decision that you always have to make as a musician is, which audience are you really recording for? Are you recording for your fans to give them what they want? Or are you recording for yourself to be true to yourself musically? Or is it a compromise between the two? But very important to think about these topics and to discuss them with the producer and to be able to make sure that the producer understands what you're going for and can bring out the best in you, and also that your fans are going to love it too. There are a few different roles that producers take. There's the traditional producer's role, and this goes back to like George Martin, a lot of the traditional producers from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, where a lot of them were just known for having amazing ears and being able to get an amazing recording out of their artists. They tended to do whatever it took to get an amazing recording at the end of the process. They might come up with an idea to bring in a choir, so they would find the singers, arrange the parts, rehearse the singers, and record them, and then mix it into the song and let the artist hear what it sounds like. They might collaborate on songwriting. They might pick up a banjo and play. But all of that, they considered just part of the job, and they had no expectation of copyright ownership on the composition side or the sound recording side. They expected to get paid a fee for their services, and if you were signed to a label, to get a percentage of the sound recording royalties. And that was it. So if you're working with that type of producer, you want to make sure that you have some paperwork in place that states that they're doing this as a work made for hire, meaning they don't get any copyrights at all in the work that they're doing. Another type of producer is your producer of beats. They're not going to be in the studio with the artist. They're going to have their own studio and they're going to do their own thing. And then At the higher level in the industry, a bigger producer, some producer that's going to be in the studio with the artist, is going to take that beat and then collaborate with the artist to write the top line and move on from there. So with a producer of beats, what you have to worry about is, did they create it 100% themselves? Or did they sample from someone? Or did they have other people perform on the track without anything in writing? So you want to really make sure that you have the right paperwork in place and that everything's been cleared. If you don't, even though they're the ones that supplied the material to your project, you're the one that's liable for copyright infringement. The final type of producer is the producer that is in the studio with the artist, and they're sort of a combination of the other two wrapped into one. So they have elements of the traditional producer where they want to get an amazing recording from the artist and to capture that. But they also are very creative. They'll arrange parts. They might sing on a track. They're going to do whatever it takes to get an amazing recording. But then they also might create some beats and bring those to the session. Or they might get the beats from someone else and add another layer onto it themselves and bring that to the session. So very, very collaborative with the artist. With this type of producer, you really need to have an honest discussion with them about the rights in the composition. Because unlike the traditional producer, there is an expectation that they will own a portion of the composition that represents their contributions to the overall work. So, a songwriting split sheet is going to be the way that you document how the songwriting gets divided. You're also going to want to have a discussion about what percentage of royalties everybody gets, and also who has administrative control over the song that was created. A lot of discussion is going to go into this. Who has publishing companies? Who's signed to a label? How do those deals affect this? But very important to have those discussions. The sound recording rights, if you are not signed to a record label, as the artist, you want to make sure that you own 100% of those sound recording rights. So if a producer of beats provides a track, you want to make sure that they transfer all rights in that sound recording over to you. If you're signed to a record label, the record label typically wants to own all the rights. So producer of beats or a pop, hip-hop producer, you want them to make sure they are signing over those sound recording rights to the record label. Again, if, a solo project, you're not signed to a label, you want to own those rights 100% so that you can do whatever you want with them. What kind of an agreement are you going to have with the producer? A verbal agreement is a big no. There are so many artists that get into trouble because they don't have a written agreement with the producer. The big problem is usually the producer has offered to do the work for free. Just give me credit and let me use it in my portfolio. And that sounds great to the artist. They don't have to pay anything, but they'll get a sound recording. So it seems like a winning proposition for both sides. Until the recording comes out amazingly well, and the producer decides that they should really be getting paid for this and be getting royalties. And they talk to a few people, they find out some copyright basics, and because they don't have a written agreement, they decide that they're going to hold the masters hostage. Unless they get paid a certain amount of money and they get promised a certain percentage of royalties. And of course, they're going to have a written agreement that the artist is now going to have to sign. This happens more than you would expect. And so to get around that, you want to make sure that you can write up the basics of an agreement with a producer. Optimally, you'll have an attorney do this for you, but you can write up the basics, and the basics signed by both parties will be better than just a verbal agreement that can't be proven by anyone. So you want to start by describing in a couple of sentences what the producer is going to be doing for you in the studio, how many songs the producer will work on, and what it will cost. And then you want to get into the important topics of, will you be sharing writing ownership and revenue with the producer? And if so, will that be detailed in a songwriting split sheet? Will the producer have any administrative control over the songs? Meaning, if the producer finds an opportunity for the song to be used, do they have the right to close that deal? Or do they have to pass it along to you to negotiate the deal? That's important to cover. And then this one's kind of important too. How long after you finish does the producer have to finish the mixing and get the masters to you? The last part of this is really thinking about your recording project. And the bottom line with all of this is the more that you've thought this out, the more you've discussed it with your producer, and the clearer vision that you're able to have, then the more likely you are to have a good experience and for your expectations to be met. It's your recording project. The music that you're creating should reflect you. So take the time to go through the process and get the right person for the job.